I'm Mel Brock for newsok.com and the Oklahoman, and we're honored today to be talking with Bob Dotson, a correspondent for NBC News, who has won numerous awards throughout his career.
I'm also a notary public.
Notary public. And we are fortunate in Oklahoma City that he made his broadcasting debut here with WKY, worked here for several years doing documentaries, and then was hired by NBC, started his career with in Cleveland, I believe so.
Correct, yeah.
And has worked for them 33 years,
34.
34 years now. And so we're going to talk with him a little bit about his career. He also went to school at Kansas, University of Kansas, and got a master's degree at Syracuse. Starting with at WKY, what did you do, and how did that prepare you for NBC News?
Well, you know, for all the people who wonder how do you become successful, my very first day at WKY, I was splicing in some film on the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And it was handout film that was sent, and it had perforations on both sides, and I spliced it in upside down. And I didn't know that, but my boss, Ernie Schultz, was sitting there reading about Pearl Harbor, and the Japanese Zeros started flying upside down. And I thought, well, maybe they did. But then when they started flying backwards and the American flag came down from the top of the picture, I thought I'd never work in television again.
Oh, my goodness.
That was my first week. But I did everything. I was a reporter, I was a photographer, I did some anchoring. But always in the back of my mind, I wanted to do documentary or longer form stories, and I got that chance. I came to Oklahoma because the Oklahoma Publishing Company and WKY at the time were together, and which is KFOR now, and they had done a number of great historical documentaries. So they let me, have my lead, and anytime I wasn't, doing what they thought I ought to be doing, they'd give me 15 minutes to go shoot some stuff, and off we were.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess at NBC, when did you start doing the longer pieces that you're become famous for? How did that work out?
Well, almost immediately. The same way at Channel 4 here in Oklahoma City. I always volunteered for the longer stories. I think that everything else gets covered pretty adequate. I mean, we got plenty of people covering the president and the governors and the hurricanes and the tornadoes and all that, but there's not enough stories about us. Now, I'm not Jerry Falwell. I'm not out to do good news. I'm out to try to find somebody who's too busy to send out a press release or have a link to the web page, who have nonetheless done something significant or something interesting or just fun to do, and then give them the same kind of investigative treatment you would if you were covering a commission, so that you can bring out more than what you suspect.
So how do you come up with these stories?
Well, interestingly, most people in our business, have sources. And my sources, a lot of times, are people who I've already done stories on now, that I've done it for 40 years. Mm-hmm. Because they kind of get it. They understand who you're looking for. So they'll be on vacation, going through Montana, and they'll say, I found the perfect guy that you ought to do a story on. But I also, of course, now being in the 21st century, the Today Show has a big website, and I have an American Story with Bob Dotson webpage. So every time one of my stories are on the air, I get like 600 to 2,000 or 3,000 story ideas, most of which begin, I've just done a quilt. But every once in a while, somebody, does something that, or heard about something that's pretty interesting, and so off I go.
Has there been a favorite story? I guess you've probably done hundreds and thousands throughout your career. Has there been a favorite story or two?
The next one.
The next one.
I always say that, because I have the kind of job you'd do if you were on vacation, and you had any curiosity at all. You get to poke around with interesting people. But I'll tell you the thing that kind of got me started, and in fact it was the documentary that got me the job at NBC. We did an hour and a half on African American heritage here in Oklahoma. And I'm the kind of guy that if I hear somebody talking and it sounds interesting, I just hang around. Like, for instance, if you and I were in a car and other journalists were with us and the right front tire went flat, everybody else would start twittering and calling the Oklahoman, to beat each other to the news. But all these years I've been able to stick around and kick the left front tire and ponder about how come it's still up. So the other day, when I was a young boy here in Oklahoma, I went out to Kingfisher, and there was an old man at the end of a coffee bar, and he kind of looked like Lincoln, and he had a big old voice that sounded like an old bugle, you know, and he was going on and driving everybody else out of the coffee shop because they probably heard it 1,000 times. But he was talking about a guy named Paul Sykes who came to Kingfisher with 600 ex-slaves and arrived in November before one of those big land runs, and it was too late to plant, didn't have any money. So he went down and he sang to the passing trains on the Rock Island Railroad line, which already had 7 trains north and south each day. And the traveling salespeople would throw money at him and laugh. But he took the money and made a picnic for everybody in town who were waiting for those times. And so when they saw what he did, then they started leaving chickens and cows and stuff. And he ended up feeding all those people who were waiting for the land runs around Kingfisher all that year. Well, he'd been buried, you know, and forgotten, essentially, because he happened to be African American. And the next year, you know, his son, who they found, became like Grand Marshal in the Kingfisher Parade. So being able to put, you know, to fill in the holes in our own story has always been fascinating to me. So that's how I got started. And so because of Paul Sykes and those kinds of people, you know, I've been skating for years.
Great. Now, NBC, like most news organizations, or all news organizations, are undergoing some major belt tightening these days.
Absolutely.
Is there a future for a journalist like you with more of the long-form type stories in broadcast journalism?
I think I'm very hopeful because the same situation was around 40 years ago. I mean, they always would love you to work on 100 stories a day as opposed to 3 that are thoughtful. But the technology offers a wonderful chance for storytellers, because I used to just write on smoke. The story was on the air, it was gone, who knew? It was it. Maybe somebody kept a little videotape, but you can't figure out how to use the machine. Now, with the website technology, 6 million people watch my stories on the Today Show, 9 million if you figure about the delay in DVR folks. But you put it on the website, and we had 4 of them last year that had over 20 million people who watched the story with a commercial. So what I'm saying is, while everybody else is twittering, and the viewer and the reader can't differentiate between where they first heard anything, then that opens up an opportunity for the storytellers of the world to say, okay, here's the thoughtful story, and it's on that little click away from you, and so you can go to the bean counters in your business and say, now here's value added. You know, it may have cost a little more, it may have taken some time to do, but it has legs and can last for the next 18 months or maybe a lifetime, and you'll get essentially in the same number of clicks, and maybe you can make the money that way. So I think you know, people shouldn't lose heart, that there's still places to go. I mean, you know, your readers and your viewers, if they like how you write, you know, they're going to say, what's Mel doing today? They click on your name and they'll go see the last 10 stories you had. So I think that that's hopeful for storytellers, as opposed to the only thing available to us is to shout headlines every 5 seconds.
Okay. Well, Bob, I appreciate your time. We welcome you back to Oklahoma, and best of luck with your future career.
Thank you very much. Feels like home.
Let's see it.